Hey folks, Dust here, and I know it's been a while since I've done a CSGO related video, but to be honest, with it being the player break and with there not being much going on until the major is starting up, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about, and I just had kind of some rough personal stuff I was going through with a loss of someone who's close to my family and just a few other things that made, doing CSGO content a little bit difficult. But with the major here, I wanted to get back into the swing of it, and of course, it is tradition on this channel to go through the pick'em as many people do and kind of give you some of my thoughts on who I'm picking and why. And so that's what I'm gonna do with this video, and I'm not gonna go like too heavy-handed with analysis just because I haven't had a chance to really comb through a lot of the data like I usually do. But I'm going to still put something together here. I do know some of these teams pretty well. Some teams I don't know as well, but we're still going to make something of it, okay? So without further ado, let's get into it. For me, there are two, maybe three teams that have the best chance of going 3-0 in the Challenger stage. And the first one, of course, is going to be none other than Vitality. Now, while Team Liquid has been getting the better of them recently, they have been pretty consistently beating all the other top teams in the world right now. They've been placing top 4 a ton. Of course, they had the second place finish at Cologne, and they won CS Summit and the ECS finals, and at Summit, of course, they beat Team Liquid in the finals there. They have a really solid map pool. The only real weak point is Train, and I don't know too much about the verdict, to be honest, but what we've seen so far seemed all right, and it seems like people are kind of scared to play them on it. They've looked really, really strong on Overpass. Mirage Dust 2 can play the others fine as well. Obviously, the big X factor for Vitality is ZywOo. The dude is an absolute monster. Some people are saying he's now the best player in the world, certainly probably number 2 behind Simple at worst, and it's just crazy talented, crazy versatile. He is good enough to carry a team in a stage like this to at least advance, which is crazy stuff. I think the big question mark surrounding Vitality will be Apex and Alex, because I feel like they really need to show up for this team to have a deep run. When this team has had their big results, I feel it's because Apex and Alex have been able to be a really good supporting cast around ZywOo as far as frag production goes, and Alex has been able to find a way to lead the team pretty effectively with, at times a looser, aggressive style, but has definitely been able to define some roles, help them shape out some defaults, and at least give them some type of foundation to play off of. Both Apex and Alex were a bit off in Chicago, and so that's kind of the one thing to think about if maybe they're not going to come in top form. Hopefully they will, and if they do, I think this team is certainly going to make it past this stage. There's no question about that. I think the real question is how deep can Vitality go? Can they make it into like a semi-finals appearance or something like that? Is kind of what's expected since they are, ranked a top 5 team in the world. So they're certainly a leading candidate for a team, for me, that will go 3-0. The other big candidate for me to go 3-0 is going to be Mouse Sports. Now, I know they had a slow start in the minor, which scared a lot of people because they lost to No Chance in an initial best of 1, and they dropped an opening match to Sprout as well. But they still wound up winning the whole minor when it was all said and done. I had some mixed feelings on this run because they didn't look as impressive as you would hope. You would hope they just dominate this thing. But hey, they got past it, they made it, and that's what matters most. And leading up into the minor, they've had some pretty solid results so far, though it is true they haven't been together that long, so there's not that much data on them. Their first real LAN was Sydney back in May, so again, only together for about 3 or so months. They've been to about 4 or 5 LANs. Their Cologne losses to Navi were slightly disappointing, but they look pretty good overall at that event outside of that, and they seem to be on their way up when you look at some of the stuff they've done, like at DreamHack Open Tour and the EPL groups that they played in to get to the EPL finals. And I just feel like this team does have a lot of strengths. I think they've shown some good ability in their map pool, particularly Inferno, Mirage, Nuke, and Train, outside of the Navi losses, at least for Train. Can play Vertigo, it seems, so that's going to be big for them. They can play Dust 2. It seems like Overpass might be the only map that's pretty iffy. So they come into this Challenger stage with one of the deepest map pools and some pretty decent results outside of, some losses to Navi, right? I think that this team has tons of talent. Rops has really come back into form. Woxic has really flourished as a star on this team. You have Frozen, who so far seems to be paying off, as he was a bit of a dice roll and they picked him up, but it seems like it's paying off. Chris J is playing effectively. Kerrigan's leading effectively and can frag at times. So this team is really, really stacked, and certainly next to Vitality for me as a 3-0 candidate. Now, in the past, the strategy has been to kind of pick a wild card team to be the 3-0 team, just to kind of ensure that you get a lot of teams that are going to advance here at the bottom. But in my opinion, the way the seeding now kind of works, the favorites are a little bit safer to pick for 3-0. You're not going to get as disappointed. So I am just going to go ahead and put Vitality at 3-0, and I'm going to go ahead and put Mouse Sports as my first team to advance. I think you could easily interchange these two teams. As far as other teams that could go 3-0, I mean, I guess theoretically G2 could go 3-0. Maybe if Furia's feeling really hot, they could do it. Maybe Energy. With some of the talent that they have on that team. There's definitely some other teams that we're going to talk about here, but that's the most comfortable I feel. And then we'll just kind of break down the other teams I think are going to advance. Now, some of these first teams I want to talk about that I think will advance are teams that are kind of guaranteed to advance for me. And so one of those teams is going to be NRG. So we'll go ahead and throw them down here. The reason why I pick NRG is while they haven't had many results since Thanos Law has joined, and Blast LA was very disappointing, they did win the minor, and their clone finish was okay. They did beat Furia and FaZe, but lost to Team Liquid and Vitality, so that's a pretty good result. I mean, you're only losing to like the top two teams in the world, and you had some wins over Furia and FaZe. You're pretty solid. Again, I do think their Blast LA performance was really, really rough, but hey, I think that they still at least had that clone finish that was pretty good. They were a pretty solid top 5 team in the world before they made the whole roster change to Stanislaw coming in for DAPS. They had many top 4 finishes. It is true they did struggle to beat some of the top 5 teams in the world, other than Vitality once and Astralis once. And they even did have some issues against some of the top 10 teams like G2, who gave them a lot of issues. But all in all, they were still a pretty good performing team. Too soon to call in their map pool, in my opinion. And while they do have an increased skill ceiling, let's stay in this law, you do have to worry a little bit about if the team operates better or not, which I think is still yet to be seen. It's really hard to say. Ethan has been a bit off lately in individual form, which is a little bit scary. And Tarek has not really been super solid yet either, but did look better at the minor. But what they do have going for them is that Breezy is nuts. Sturk has been really good. And I mean, I feel like they do have some talent here. If Ethan can get back in shape, if Breezy and Sirk can maintain, if Tarek continues to show better form than that Stanislaus on the team, and as long as they've put in some really good practice heading into this and fixed up some things, I think there's still enough talent there for them to go ahead and make it through at least this portion, just off the back of some of the strengths they have with the core of the team that's still there. Another team that's definitely going to make it, in my opinion, is going to be G2, at least in this stage. They are indeed coming off of a really rough ride at IM Chicago, where they got Groot, my mate in Brazil, which was just really disappointing. Their loss to Team Liquid, so fair enough. But prior to that, they had that second place finish EPL, only to Team Liquid. They had the top 6 at Dallas, where they did lose to FaZe, but did have some wins over Energy. Disappointing at Tours, due to that loss to Valiance, and no really big wins. But I think that with how well they played at EPL, with how well they played at Dallas, just kind of looking at the lineup, I think you certainly can expect them to at least make it past this part of the Challenger stage. They have a decently wide map pool, but it is true they don't really have any real, true dominant map, but definitely can play some maps pretty well. They do have lots of talent between KNES and Shox. Both of those players have been playing pretty well lately. Amanek has seemingly been a great addition to the team as far as fragging power and helping with the leadership. They definitely seem to be showing a better style with Amanek on the team. They seem to have the roles a little bit more well-defined as far as who's doing what. And in particular, I like Shox in this more forward role, being a little bit more active on the map, not always playing the edges. And KNES obviously being, that power opper for the team. And again, Amanek is helping out Shox with leadership and also, fulfilling a pretty solid role. Haven't been super impressed by Jackson Lucky. And in fact, I think Lucky took a little bit of a hit by his role kind of changing in all of this. But all in all, I think you have to expect them to be able to advance out of this group, given the competition they're up against. There's obviously some teams that are certainly ahead of them, which are the teams I've kind of named, but I think they certainly fit in right here as one of the other 7 teams that will advance. Another team that I think should advance is going to be Furia. Now, Furia blew up big time with their success at DreamHack Rio, and in particular, their top 4 finish at DreamHack Masters Dallas, only losing to Liquid, but having beat Vitality and Fnatic. This really put them on the map, and a lot of people have been paying attention to them ever since then. Essentially, they've been a slow-building team within the North American region, or America's region, I guess I should say, obviously being from Brazil, but they compete in all the North American leagues, where they had that Zotac event in mid-2018 where they beat Complexity United, and that was on LAN. And then they kind of slowly built up in regional play and different qualifiers. Of course, most recently, they had qualified for Dallas over some kind of middle-of-the-pack professional teams. And then they also did qualify for Cologne over some other kind of middle-of-the-pack North American teams. Now, since all of this, they did have a rough event at Mochi XL and at Cologne. To be fair, one of their losses at Cologne were to Energy and to Navi, but this was certainly still a step back from their Dallas performance considering who they beat there. They did well enough at the minor, And they beat Avangard in a best of 5 on LAN recently at a small event, though that was the debut event for Avangard with Adren, so they haven't been really playing together, but still a decent result there. I'll say their map pool is iffy, but I think it's enough to get past this stage. They definitely have a pretty strong Mirage and Nuke, and they certainly have been able to put Vertigo to good use. So those are probably their 3 power maps. They have some issues, though, since they have to ban Dust 2 and their Inferno isn't that great. But they have a lot of talent with Urian Serato alone. They do have a decent enough map pool. They have a pretty effective style. Art has this like cool X-Factor aggressive playing style and is an effective leader. So I think all in all, this team certainly should advance, and that's why I've stuck them down there. Now I'm going to get to some of the teams that are a bit questionable to me as I pick these final 3, because everything so far I feel pretty comfortable with, but these last 3 teams are a little bit tricky because I feel like of these 3 remaining spots that I'm going to choose, there are maybe 4 or 5 teams I feel could be in this mix. This is where it gets a little bit more difficult, and so I'll just kind of start naming teams off and kind of explaining to you why I think they could make it, but why I'm a little bit hesitant. So with North, this team's only been together a few months since Yugi came on the team and Valley became the in-game leader, so they're a little bit hard to read for that reason. They had a pretty rough minor, if I'm 100% honest, losing to Crazy and Mouse Sports in a pretty one-sided fashion in those final best of 3s. Also had a huge loss to Fnatic earlier on. They made it through in the play over MPPK, so no really big victories here to impress you, to be honest, but they just squeaked by, so I guess fair enough. They also lost to Made in Brazil and face at the EPL finals, was very disappointing. Not a great run there at all. But prior to that, they had a pretty nice little win at ECS and a close loss to Furious. Not a bad event there at ECS. They did okay in Dallas. Had some games over Vitality and a close loss to Team Liquid. But ultimately still lost to the Liquid and Vitality in best of 3s, though they were close games. And again, those are top two teams in the world, basically. So not bad. Also, they had a really great debut in the EPL groups over Heroic, Big, and Na'Vi. So I guess the point is I saw some good stuff from them at their debut at the EPL group stage. And I saw some good stuff from them at Dallas, and they were pretty good at ECS, but their EPL finals run was really rough, and the minor was really rough. And so I'm a little bit concerned about how strong they truly are going into this, especially because Yugi was fine at first, but has been kind of rough lately. Bella's doing fine so far. Gade's a bit iffy, but at least is useful. Kirby is doing better, but still not at a star level you'd hope from him based on like his history. AC's fine for his role. So the point is they don't really have like some crazy breakout player that can kind of carry the team. Like Valda can play really well. Gade can have good games. Kirby can have good games. But they don't really have someone who's consistently really able to top frag and really able to be the star player of this team. I don't know who you'd even pick to be the star player of the team. I mean, maybe you could still say it's Valda, but he's kind of taken a step back on fragging because he's the in-game leader. Still fragging fine, but not like the numbers he used to have. Kirby, again, has been improved, but still not putting up like monster numbers. So I'm a little bit concerned about the overall firepower of the team. I'm a little bit concerned about the overall results, their last couple of events together. And I'm still not 100% on what their map pool really is going to wind up being. So that's why they're iffy for me. They definitely have some talent. They have some capability, but I can't be confident on them, to be honest, just because the minor left me really desiring more, I guess you could say. Then you look at a team like Avangard, where they've only played one LAN together since Adren came on the team for Sanji, which is that best of 5 loss to Furia at like kind of a smaller event. Forget the name of it. Previous lineup didn't do too well at the last 2 events they played at, which was DreamHack Summer and DreamHack Tour, but they did win Rio over Furia and Valiant, which of course is now Crazy, and that was with Sanji. So pretty good small event there, but a couple of rough ones leading up to the roster change. And then prior to that, really you have to kind of go back to the last major, where they went 3-1 in the Challenger stage over Furia, G2, and Tyloo. Had a close loss to Liquid and some wins over Energy and FaZe in the Legend stage, ultimately losing out to Na'Vi and Ints in the best of 3s. So a really solid showing there. It was a really good eye test despite the fact they didn't get a top 8 finish. And then you have to kind of go back to late 2018 and talk about any other LAN results. I think they have some really good talent with their players between Quicker, Buster, and Jame. I mean, I know there's a lot of memes about Jame always saving the op and being too passive and shit like that, but in reality, it wasn't that long ago that people were really hyping up Jame to be like a top CIS prospect. It's one that Na'Vi should consider maybe looking into to be their new in-game leader, and maybe op and then let Simple go back to being more of a flex role or something like that. So I think some of the criticism that Jame gets is a little bit kind of just unfair. I get why people do it, but I think he's still a really solid player. I think Quicker and Buster also can do really, really well. I think Adren will add experience to this team and really kind of help shape them out a little bit. So I actually really like this team a lot. I think they certainly have a really strong chance to make it out of the challenger stage. Definitely has some solid maps. They do have a couple maps that are a little bit rough on. I'm not sure how the roster change will affect things, but all in all, I think they're definitely good enough to be a candidate to make it out of this. Another really solid candidate would be Crazy, as they had a really solid run at the minor with wins over North and Fnatic. While they did have disappointing losses to Ancient at DreamHack Summer, they did at least have a decent DreamHack tour with some wins over G2 and a close loss to Mousesports. Also, they looked okay in Rio with a close loss to Avangard in the semifinals. Remember, last major at IM Katowice, they had a really good run at the minors, knocking out Mousesports, taking some mats of Vitality and Ints, and then otherwise having some close losses to Vitality, really close to making it to that major. So definitely seen some cool stuff for them in some of the like tier 2 tournaments, and had a pretty good run at the minors last time around and did really well at this minor. I mean, Nex and Hunter are super good players for this team. I would expect them to get some offers onto some bigger name teams sometime in the near future, in my opinion. Esperano can be good, but has had some off events lately, but overall his career has shown that he can be a pretty solid player. Just to give a couple of highlights there. The map pool's okay, so certainly I think that they can make it here. And then the last team that I would kind of put in the running for these last 3 spots would be Fours. Now, there's not a whole lot of LAN data out there for Fours, but they crushed the CIS minor over like Spirit and Simon, all those teams. Had a LAN win over Winstrike recently as well, so doing really well in the region. Had a really good Copenhagen games against some smaller European teams like Sprout and Tricked and such. They also even had some hype around them because they qualified for IM Chicago over Heroic, Optic, and Hellraisers in online play, but ultimately couldn't do it due to visa issues. They also had a decent run in the Cologne qualifiers even. Ultimately lost to Team Liquid, had some wins over G2 and Hellraisers. This XE Power guy just seems super insane. Definitely a top op prospect from their region. Others are also pretty solid. I think Flit, I think his name is. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Also seems really strong. And the other players on the team seem good enough. So I think that you have to put Fours out there as a candidate. So that's kind of where I'm left. I'm left with 3 spots left to put for advancing. And my main candidates are Avangar, Fours, Crazy, and North. And I think I'm going to go... This is tough. I think each of these teams have a pretty equal chance to make it, but I have 3 spots available, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 teams realistically to choose from. So someone's not going to make the cut. I'm going to go ahead and throw Crazy in there. I think they showed a lot at this minor that made me pretty confident that they can make it out of this. I like Avangar still. I think I'd put them in there. And then I think I'm going to go Fours. This is my wild card. So the team that I'm leaving out of this, that I feel really bad about, by the way, is North. I think North could very easily make it through and be in one of these spots. This hurts. I don't even know if I can do this. I'm just kind of taking a dice roll here, I think. For some reason, I'm liking Fours. I think that my main issue with North is they just look kind of off at the minors and really kind of squeak by on the play-in over MVPPK, and they just didn't look that great at EPL either. So that I'm kind of just basing it off the most recent form. As far as some of these other teams go, Complexity, they just haven't really played much since Stanislaw left, and it hasn't looked that great for them online. And yeah, they had that cool win at ECS over Made in Brazil, and Obo looked pretty good there. And definitely he seems to be a prospect for the future, but I don't know. I feel like they're missing a lot with Stanislaw being gone. And it seems like their online results lately haven't been that great. And I know they had a little issue with Rike and not being on the practice, and they had to use nothing as a stand-in for EPL. And I just thought they have too much chaos going over there. Hellraisers are also having like this whack roster situation heading into this, and their online results lately have looked pretty poor. And even their LAN results lately haven't been that great. So can't really feel confident picking these teams. Greyhound, they do well within their region, but they haven't really done jack at international events against like top European or North American teams. They had like that one cool win against FaZe at Sydney. And other than that, they haven't really done anything to impress me. Tyloo, they have seemingly enough talent to advance from a stage like this. And they've done fine within their region, including how they did at the Asia Minor and how they did, they did really well in these Malmo qualifiers. But they were awful at EPL finals. They were awful at DreamHack Dallas. They weren't impressive at StarLadder Season 7. And so I just can't really pick them at all. And then for like, Simon and Dream Eaters, they're just teams that don't really have much land play for me to look at. They've only really played within their region or against smaller European teams, so I can't really feel confident in these teams. And then INTZ, I mean, KNG's on his way out the door, it seems like, to Made in Brazil. Seems like that's pretty much locked in already. They didn't look that great. They also kind of squeaked by, I think, through a play-in to make it to this. They looked really, really rough when I saw them in Rio. They got destroyed by Furia in a best-of-3 on LAN, and some of their other stuff just hasn't looked that great, so I'm just not confident in them at all. And now, because of that, I'm talking about all this, I got to pick a team that's going to go 0-3. For me, the teams that are most likely to go 0-3 are probably Dream Eaters, Simon. I think KNG could probably carry INTZ through at least one map victory somewhere along the line, and I'll just go with Dream Eaters. So there you go. Locked it in. Those are my picks for the Challenger stage. Hope you folks enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you next time around for the next stage.